Maya had lived in her apartment for less than a week when she realized something was wrong with the walls. It began with a sound, a soft clicking that came from inside the drywall every night around 2:13 a.m. Not rats, not pipes, not settling. She knew those sounds. She'd lived in old buildings before. This was different, rhythmic, deliberate, almost like a pattern. At first, she tried to ignore it. She pulled her pillow over her head, squeezed her eyes shut, and told herself she needed sleep, not paranoia. But the clicking didn't stop. It grew louder, traveling from one corner of the bedroom to the other, pacing, like someone dragging their fingernails just beneath the surface of the paint. The fourth night, Maya snapped. She sat up in bed, flicked on the lamp, and pressed her ear to the wall. Silence. Cold, empty silence. But the moment she crawled back under the blanket, click, 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 right behind her head. She flinched. The hairs on her arms stood straight up, her breath caught halfway down her throat. Whatever was inside the wall was not afraid of her light, her anger, or her exhaustion. It wanted her to hear it, and it wanted her to know it was listening too. By the end of the first week, the clicking evolved. Maya began noticing faint shadows underneath the paint, thin, spidery cracks spreading across the bedroom wall in patterns that almost looked intentional. Like writing, like symbols. She took pictures, studied them, compared them. Every morning, the cracks had changed, shifted, moved. On the 10th day, the cracks formed the outline of a hand, a long, distorted hand with an extra joint in the fingers. She stopped sleeping after that. The first time she saw it move, it was almost too fast a process. She had returned from work after a long evening shift and tossed her jacket on the chair. As she walked toward the bathroom, she felt the familiar cold stillness, that heavy, suffocating air that meant the walls were aware of her presence. Then, from the corner of her eye, a ripple, a bulge, as if the wall inhaled. Maya froze. The bulge traveled vertically, slow and deliberate, as though something was sliding its way up the inside of the drywall, pushing against it from behind. She didn't move. Couldn't. The bulge reached the ceiling, and stopped. The silence that followed was too precise, too intentional. The apartment felt like it was holding its breath, waiting for her reaction. She backed into the hallway, shaking so badly she had to hold the wall just to stay upright. The wall felt warm beneath her palm. Alive. That night, she slept on the couch, though sleep wasn't the right word. She lay there for hours, listening to the faint shifting inside the walls. Something pressed against the plaster near her feet once, twice, slowly tracing the outline of her legs through the wall as if mapping her shape. She almost screamed, but screaming meant acknowledging it. Acknowledging meant inviting it. Inviting meant she didn't want to know. The final night began with silence. Deep, unnatural silence. The kind that made her skin crawl. Maya sat on the couch, legs pulled tightly to her chest, every nerve in her body alert. Normally, the clicking began at 2:13 a.m., but at 2:12 a.m., she heard something new. A breath. Not hers, not human. Slow, heavy, right behind the living room wall. Maya's entire body went cold. She stared at the wall, not blinking, barely breathing. The breath on the other side grew louder, deeper, like something enormous was shifting its weight, repositioning itself. Then she heard fingers, long, dragging fingers, scraping down the inside of the plaster, following her outline on the couch. She scrambled to her feet. "Stop!" she screamed, voice cracking. Everything went silent, completely, utterly silent. She almost thought she'd imagined it, until the wall dented outward. Just once, as if something inside had slammed its palm against the plaster from the other side. Then again, harder. Dust drifted from the ceiling. Then the wall split. A thin, black crack cut down the center of the living room wall, widening slowly, like a mouth trying to form its first word. Maya backed away, trembling violently, staring at that widening, impossible gap. She saw it inside the wall. A shape, tall, wrong, folded into the narrow space between the studs like a spider flattened to survive. Long fingers curled out first, too long, bending twice. Then a head, but not a human head, a smooth, featureless oval that tilted unnaturally as it tasted the air. Its limbs unfolded one by one, joints bending in ways human joints never could. It wasn't crawling out. It was unfurling, releasing itself from its hiding place. The creature turned its blank face toward her, and then it clicked. Once, twice, 3 times, mimicking the exact rhythm Maya had tapped on the wall the week she moved in. Her message, her pattern, her language. It had learned her. It stepped out to the wall fully and smiled without a mouth. The neighbors found her the next afternoon, the apartment door wide open, lights still on, TV still playing static. Maya was gone, but the wall had changed. Fresh cracks stretched across the plaster, and in the center, a new outline, a human outline, her outline, as if someone had carved Maya's shape deep into the wall. From the inside, when Maya vanished, the landlord did exactly what he always did when a tenant disappeared without explanation. He changed the locks and told the next person that the last tenant left suddenly. He never told them why, and someone new always moved in. The next tenant was Daniel, quiet, practical, the kind of man who didn't believe in anything he couldn't touch or measure. He signed the lease the same afternoon he saw the apartment. Good price, good location, freshly repainted. The walls looked brand new, as if they had been carefully covered, as if someone desperately wanted to hide something underneath. Daniel didn't question it. He should have. The first night, Daniel slept like a rock. The second night, too. But on the third night, he woke to the faint sound of tapping. He frowned into the dark, a soft, rhythmic pattern. Click, 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 click. He turned over and checked his phone. 2:13 a.m. The same time Maya used to wake up screaming, though he didn't know that. No one did. At first, he assumed it was the pipes, or the neighbors, or the building settling. But the pattern repeated, exactly the same rhythm, not random. Click, 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 click. Daniel rubbed his eyes. Pipes don't tap in threes, he muttered. The wall answered. Click, click, click. Sharper this time. Like excitement. Daniel froze, the air pressing around him. Thick, almost wet, as if humidity had seeped straight out of the drywall. He placed his palm against the wall. It pulsed. Once. Then stilled. Daniel jerked his hand back. No, absolutely not, he whispered, standing quickly. But the wall followed him. Wherever he moved in the room, the tapping came from the section of wall closest to him. He stopped breathing. The tapping stopped too. He inhaled sharply. Click, 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 matching his breath. Studying him, learning him. Daniel backed toward the door. The air tightened. He reached for the doorknob, but the moment his fingers brushed it, the tapping turned frantic. Click, 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 click. Like something panicking. Like something begging. No, Daniel snapped aloud, surprising himself. No, I don't know what the hell this is, but no. The tapping stopped instantly. Silence swallowed the room. And then, a whisper of movement from inside the wall, as if something enormous shifted, dragging itself lower, toward the floor. Daniel stumbled backward so fast he nearly tripped. He grabbed his keys, shoved his feet into shoes without tying them, and bolted out the door. He promised himself he'd never come back. He lied. The next morning, he returned only to grab essentials: laptop, clothes, documentation. He told himself he'd be in and out in 10 minutes. The apartment was silent when he entered. Freshly still. Too still. He grabbed his bag and headed for the hallway, but then froze. The living room wall had changed. A new crack ran across it, thin but long, like the tear in the wall had healed crooked. Something dark leaked slightly from it, not liquid, not mold, something like soot, burnt, powdery residue. The exact outline of a handprint was pressed into the soot. Long fingers, too many joints. Daniel gagged and turned away. It's just old wiring, he said out loud. It's just moisture. It's just... The wall pulsed behind him, soft, loving, like a heartbeat trying to synchronize with his. Daniel bolted. He didn't return for 3 days. On the 4th day, he received the first message. His phone buzzed at 2:13 a.m. A picture message. No number. No text. Just a photo. A photo of his bedroom wall, taken from inside the apartment, inside the room. But he wasn't there. The apartment was locked. He hadn't gone back. And the wall looked wrong. Black cracks spread across it like veins, branching out from a central point. The center was bulging slightly, like something was pushing from behind, trying to get out. Daniel dropped the phone, heart hammering so hard it blurred his vision. The phone buzzed again. Another picture. This time, the crack was wider, and inside the crack, something white, bone white, like a fingertip. Daniel staggered backward, breath shallow, eyes wide. His phone buzzed a third time. A video, shaking. He opened it. At first, just darkness. Then, slowly, something scraped against the inside of the wall. The camera zoomed in. A long finger slid out of the crack, followed by a second, and a third, all bending the wrong way. Something began unfolding, releasing itself. The video ended abruptly. Daniel screamed, throwing the phone across the room. He didn't sleep, didn't speak, didn't think. Only one sentence looped through his mind. It learned Maya. It is learning me. But the worst part wasn't the video. It was the message that came with it. A single line of text from his own number, sent to himself, sent from inside the apartment. 3 words. Words tapped in the same familiar rhythm he'd heard nights before. "You're next, Daniel." Daniel didn't sleep. Not really. He drifted in and out of shallow, jittery half-dreams, the kind where the world feels made of static and the darkness behind your eyelids won't stay still. Every time he closed his eyes, he felt the memory of the wall pressing closer, like a body sliding beneath water, rising toward the surface. By late morning, he was shaking. Not from fear this time, from the weight of exhaustion so suffocating it blurred the edges of reality. He sat on the edge of the motel bed, elbows on his knees, palms pressed to his face. The room was too quiet, too thin, as if it could not shield him the way real walls should. His phone buzzed again. Not a message, a notification. Motion detected in your living room. 11:03 a.m. He hadn't forgotten to unplug the security camera. He had ripped it from a wall before leaving the apartment. He remembered the sound, the plastic crack, the falling thud. He forced himself to look. The screenshot was dark, grainy, blurred, as if the camera struggled to focus. But Daniel could still make out the shape. A long, stretched form stood in the center of the living room. Bent, tilted, spine like a crooked branch. Arms too long to be human. The head was turned toward where the camera should have been mounted, as if it missed being watched. Daniel's throat closed. He didn't open the full video. He didn't have to. He deleted the app from his phone, but even after the icon disappeared, he swore he saw the shape reflected faintly in the dark glass of the blank screen. A smear of shadow stretching toward him. A soft tapping sound came from the motel wall behind him. Tap, 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 tap. His heartbeat stumbled. "No," he whispered. "You're not here. You can't be here." Another tap, slower this time, almost hurt. He pressed his palms over his ears and backed away until his shoulders hit the motel headboard. The wall went silent. But Daniel felt it, that familiar shift in air pressure, that sense of something leaning in. Not physically, but through memory, through whatever thread tied him to the place he had fled. He shoved his clothes into a bag and left the motel in under 3 minutes. He ended up wandering the city with no destination. Crowded streets, noise, sunlight, none of it mattered. He couldn't shake the sensation that something moved just behind him in the corners of reflective surfaces. Windows, car mirrors, metal street signs. A smear of shadow, a stretched outline, a familiar tilt of a head that wasn't a head. By late afternoon, his exhaustion caught up to him again. He found himself near a small library, quiet, old, the kind with narrow aisles and creaking floorboards. He stepped inside. It was peaceful, human. He sat between 2 tall shelves in the back, forcing himself to breathe slowly, deliberately. He needed a plan. He needed distance. He needed the part of his mind that wasn't drowning. But something was wrong. At first, Daniel thought it was just fatigue. Then he felt it, a pressure in the floorboard beneath his foot, a pulse, subtle, rhythmic. He froze, breath trapping in his throat. Libraries had old floors, old noises, but old floors didn't pulse. He shifted his weight to the other foot. The board beneath him pressed upward, just slightly, as if responding. Tap! The sound came from inside the floor, right under him. Daniel stumbled backward into the aisle, knocking 2 books to the ground. An older woman at the front desk looked up, but didn't approach. Tap! The sound followed him. Tap, tap, tap. It wasn't angry. It wasn't demanding. It was seeking, like fingertips brushing under the floor, searching for the person they recognized. Searching for him. Daniel fled the library. It followed him everywhere that day. Not physically, not fully, but through sounds that didn't belong in the world outside that apartment. The subway tunnel. Tap! The metal bench near the bus stop. Tap, tap! The stairwell of the shopping center. Tap, 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 tap. Always the same rhythm. Always his. By dusk, he found himself sitting on a bench overlooking the river, hands trembling, breath uneven. He pulled out his phone. No messages, no pictures, no missed calls. Just a wallpaper. But even that made him freeze. His wallpaper had been a default mountain view. Now it was black. Not fully black. A deep shadow image, almost invisible unless you looked closely. A shape was pressed into the darkness. Long, tall, bent, watching him. He dropped the phone onto the ground. The screen flickered once, then went dark, without cracking, without shutting off, as if something had pressed its hand over the digital image, smothering the display. Daniel stared at it, ice pouring through his veins. "I'm not coming back," he whispered into the dimming air. A soft breeze brushed his shoulder. Not cold, warm, familiar. He closed his eyes tightly because he knew that warmth. Knew it from the moments in the apartment when the air had pressed against him like a presence leaning close. The breeze grew heavier. Not wind, not air, a weight. Like something towering was bending behind him, lowering itself in the way humans crouch. Not touching him, but close. Too close. An almost embrace, hovering inches from his back. Daniel didn't move. Couldn't move. The air trembled around him. Then, click, right behind his ear. A single click. Not angry. Not threatening. A plea. He swallowed, trembling. "I can't," he whispered. "I can't go back there." Silence. Then the faintest vibration traveled through the bench beneath him, not from the ground, but from inside the metal. Tap, 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 tap. The exact pattern he'd tapped the first night. The pattern that had started everything. The answering one came slower. Sad, uncertain, almost hurt. Tap, tap, tap. Daniel's breath hitched. This thing, whatever it was, wasn't trying to kill him. It didn't understand fear, or boundaries, or death. It only understood loneliness, and the first person who answered its call. Tap. The bench vibrated weakly. Tap, tap. Daniel squeezed his eyes shut as something pressed against the back of his neck. Not a touch, but the idea of one. Present. Waiting. Hopeful. The sun finally dipped behind the buildings, and shadows spilled across the riverbank. When Daniel opened his eyes again, the bench was still. The air was still. His phone was still dark. But the feeling wasn't gone. It wasn't leaving. It was simply nearby, waiting, learning him, growing stronger. And the night had only begun. Daniel stayed on the riverbank long after the sun had disappeared behind the skyline, watching the city lights ripple across the dark water. Cars passed behind him. People walked dogs. Life moved normally. But the air around him wasn't normal. It watched him, followed the rhythm of his breathing, waited for him to speak. He didn't. For the first time, he didn't respond to the taps. Didn't tap back. Didn't acknowledge the invisible presence hovering inches behind him. And that silence was somehow worse. Because the presence grew, confused. It shifted. The metal bench vibrated again, but the pattern this time was off kilter, searching, misaligned, like a voice trembling in the dark. Tap, 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 tap. A shiver crawled down Daniel's spine. "I'm not coming back," he whispered. "I can't." The presence paused. The air thickened around him like a storm being inhaled through a narrow opening. Then, A single click behind him. Sharp, precise, not soft or pleading this time. A command. Daniel stood abruptly. Stop. The air pulled tighter. Weight gathered behind him. Shadows lengthened unnaturally along the pavement, stretching toward his feet even though the street lights were bright. He backed away, and the shadows followed. Not naturally, not passively. They slithered. Daniel ran. He didn't know where he was running, or why his body thought running would help, but instinct crushed every rational thought in his skull. His feet pounded the ground. His breath tore from his lungs. Behind him, the shadows followed at an unnatural pace, fast, smooth, gliding over pavement without breaking shape. He sprinted across a busy street, cars braking hard, horns blaring, voices shouting after him. But he didn't look back. He couldn't. The presence was coming. Not walking. Not drifting. Not tapping. Coming. The air around him vibrated like a pressure wave. Sound without noise, movement without footsteps. Daniel turned a corner, sprinted down a narrow alley, and reached a dead end. A brick wall. No exit. He spun around. The alley behind him darkened as if night had been poured into it, swallowing light in layers. The first thing he heard was a voice. Not human, not separate, not external. It came from everywhere at once, from the walls, from the ground, from the air. Click, 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 click. But now he understood. It wasn't tapping. It was language. You left me. You left me. You left me. Daniel pressed himself against the cold brick wall behind him, chest heaving, fingers trembling. I didn't leave you, he choked out. I escaped. The shadows surged forward. A shape formed, tall, bent, twisted by angles no living thing could imitate. Its limbs seeped from the darkest points of the alley, its body unfolding like a figure peeling itself from the wall surface. Dozens of faint, pale impressions clung to like trapped memories, stretched faces, curled fingers, silhouettes of those it had kept. Maya's outline flickered across its chest. Daniel's knees nearly buckled. Stop, he begged. You don't understand. The presence shuddered violently, and suddenly the world around him blurred. The alley dissolved, brick by brick, melting away like paint dripping from canvas. When reality settled again, Daniel stood inside his old apartment. The living room, the couch, the cracks, the crooked lamp, everything exactly as he left it, except the walls pulsed, smoothly, rhythmically, with the tempo of a heartbeat, not his, and the bulge in the largest wall, the one that had once only pushed forward slightly, now jutted nearly 2 feet into the room, as if the entire structure swelled with breath. Daniel staggered backward into the front door, panic splintering through him. No, he gasped. No, you can't do this. Click, the floor beneath him vibrated. Click, click, the ceiling trembled. Click, the bulge receded slightly, then pressed outward again, like something on the other side was trying to meet him halfway. Daniel slid to the floor, shaking uncontrollably. I can't stay here, he whispered. You don't understand what you're doing to people. The walls stopped. The entire apartment froze. Silence felt like a dropped curtain. Then, a whisper brushed his ear. Not words. Meaning. You understand. Me. Daniel's breath caught. No, he said firmly, voice cracking. I hear you. That's not the same. A soft, aching thud came from inside the wall, not violent, not forceful, a sound of something falling to its knees. The cracks on the surface glowed faintly. One shape in particular shifted beneath the plaster, small, curled, trembling. Maya. Daniel covered his face, breath shaking. You didn't save her. You didn't keep her safe. You kept her here alone. The wall trembled, not defensively, devastated. A low, groaning sound traveled through the apartment, like grief echoing through wood. Daniel realized the truth then. It didn't understand death, or harm, or captivity. It only understood presence, connection, company, loneliness. He lowered his hands. If I stay, he whispered, you won't learn. You'll keep doing this. Over and over. The wall shifted again, cracks reshaping like a face frowning in confusion. You don't need to keep us. Daniel said softly. "You need to let us go." Silence. Then, from somewhere deep in the wall, deeper than any structure should go, tap, barely audible, like the first spark of realization. Another tap, slower, unsure. Then a third, a broken pattern, a question. Daniel exhaled shakily. "Yes, let us go." The glow beneath the plaster flickered, then faded. The bulge slowly pressed backward, receding into the wall. Cracks shrank. Dust fell. The living room dimmed, then sharpened again as if the structure sighed, long and old and exhausted. The presence began to withdraw, not vanishing, collapsing, pulling itself inward, going still, resting. For the first time since he moved in, the apartment felt empty, truly empty. Daniel stood, weak and trembling. He walked to the door, carefully, expecting the house to change its mind at the last second. It didn't. He opened the door. The hallway outside looked normal. Bright lights, quiet, alive. He crossed the threshold. 1 step, 2. On the 3rd step, he heard it, a faint tap behind him. Not desperate, not calling him back. Just a goodbye. Daniel closed his eyes. "I hope you learn," he whispered. The apartment remained silent. He walked away. He didn't look back. Months later, a new tenant moved in. They didn't complain. Not at first. But sometimes, late at night, the new tenant lay awake and heard something faint. Taps in the wall. Not patterns. Attempts. Mistakes. Practice. Learning. And somewhere deep in the apartment, where old walls held old memories, a presence waited patiently. Not hungry. Not cruel. Just lonely. And still learning what it meant to let go.